She was just a black waitress in America. He was a Japanese billionaire who thought she couldn't understand a word he said. When he insulted her in his native language, mocking her race, her job, her very existence, he assumed she would just stand there and take it like everyone expected her to. He was dead wrong. What happened next would expose the ugly truth about everyone in that restaurant, including the billionaire himself. And it all started with one perfect sentence spoken in flawless Japanese that made a room full of powerful people go completely silent. This is the story of how a woman everyone underestimated became the most powerful person in the room. Stay with me, because this one will stay with you long after it's over. Welcome to Real Black Voices. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story. And where are you watching from? You know, some people walk through life being seen. Others walk through life being looked right through, like they're made of glass. Ella Mitchell was one of the glass people. She was 24 years old, a black woman working at the Madison, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan. The kind of place where hedge fund managers closed billion-dollar deals over Wagyu beef, where celebrities hid in private rooms, where a bottle of wine could cost more than Ella made in a month. The chandeliers were made of real crystal. The tablecloths were imported from Italy. The silverware was actual silver. Everything in that restaurant screamed wealth, power, and privilege. And then there was Ella. She'd take the subway from her small apartment in the Bronx every morning, 2 trains and an hour and 15 minutes each way. She'd change into her crisp black uniform in the staff room, tie her natural hair back neatly, and step onto the floor with a professional smile that hid years of quiet exhaustion. The wealthy guests rarely looked at her face. To them, she was just a pair of hands delivering their food, a voice asking if they needed anything else, a shadow moving between tables. Some of them talked about her like she wasn't even there, making comments about the help, or rolling their eyes when she approached. But here's the thing about Ella Mitchell that nobody knew. Before the restaurant, before the subway commute, before the survival mode that had become her life, Ella had been something else entirely. She'd been a language prodigy at Columbia University, one of the top students in the East Asian Studies program. She didn't just study Japanese. She breathed it, dreamed in it, fell in love with every nuance and subtlety of the language. She'd spent a year abroad in Tokyo on a full scholarship, living with a host family who treated her like their own daughter. The Nakamura family had taught her things no textbook ever could, the way respect was woven into every sentence, the subtle art of communication that went far beyond words. But life has a cruel way of derailing dreams. Her mother got sick, hospital bills piled up. Ella had to drop out just 1 semester away from graduating. She'd told herself it was temporary, that she'd go back someday, but someday kept getting pushed further and further away, buried under rent payments and medical bills and the simple, grinding reality of survival. Now she carried plates instead of textbooks. She poured wine instead of writing papers. And every day she swallowed her pride along with her dreams. But she never forgot the language. She never lost the gift. At the restaurant, Ella had 2 main problems: her manager, Mr. Patterson, and her co-worker, Victoria. Mr. Patterson was the kind of manager who smiled at customers and snarled at staff. He cared about one thing: keeping rich people happy. Everything else, including his employees' dignity, was expendable. And Ella had noticed something else about him, too. The way he assigned the worst shifts to the black and Latino servers. The way complaints from certain staff members mysteriously got lost. The way his eyes would slide past her like she was furniture. Then there was Victoria. Victoria had worked at the Madison for 5 years. She was blonde, polished, and absolutely ruthless. From the moment Ella started, Victoria had seen her as a threat. Ella was good at her job. Customers liked her genuine warmth, her quiet competence, and Victoria couldn't stand it. So Victoria made Ella's life miserable in small, calculated ways. She'd give Ella the most difficult customers. She'd forget to tell Ella when orders were ready. She'd whisper to other servers when Ella walked by, just loud enough to hear but never loud enough to prove anything. Ella endured it all. She had no choice. This job paid for her mother's medication. It kept a roof over their heads. She just had to hold on. On this particular Thursday evening, something was different. Ella could feel it the moment she walked in for her shift. The air was electric with tension. Staff members were whispering urgently. Mr. Patterson was sweating more than usual, his face flushed and anxious. "What's going on?" Ella asked one of the busboys. His eyes went wide. "Haven't you heard? Daiichi Murakami is coming tonight." Ella's heart stopped. Everyone knew that name. Daiichi Murakami was one of the most powerful men in Asia, a Japanese technology billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. He owned companies across 3 continents. He was known for 2 things, his brilliant mind and his absolutely unforgiving standards. The business press called him the perfectionist because he accepted nothing less than flawless execution in everything. He was coming to New York for a major acquisition deal, and he'd chosen the Madison for his dinner meeting. Mr. Patterson gathered everyone in the kitchen, his voice tight with stress. "Listen to me carefully. Mr. Murakami has reserved our best table. This is the most important night we've had in years. Everything must be absolutely perfect. One mistake, and I will personally make sure whoever is responsible never works in this city again." His eyes scanned the room and landed on Ella. "Mitchell, you're on table 7. That's Mr. Murakami's table." Ella felt the blood drain from her face. Table 7 was center stage, the most visible spot in the entire restaurant. She glanced at Victoria, who was smirking, arms crossed. This was a setup. If Ella failed, she'd be humiliated in front of everyone. If she succeeded, Victoria would find another way to tear her down. "Sir," Ella said quietly, "perhaps someone with more experience would be—" "I've made my decision," Patterson snapped. "Don't embarrass us." As Ella straightened her apron, she had no idea that the next few hours would change the entire course of her life. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the front doors opened, and Daiichi Murakami walked in. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He was in his late 50s, tall and lean, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Ella's annual salary. His black hair was touched with silver at the temples, and his face wore an expression of cool assessment, as if he were constantly evaluating everything around him and finding it slightly wanting. But it was his eyes that got you. Dark, sharp, penetrating. The eyes of a man who had built an empire by seeing what others missed, by never accepting excuses, by demanding excellence from everyone around him. He wasn't alone. 2 younger Japanese men flanked him, both in expensive suits, both looking nervous. Associates from his company, Ella guessed. Men who had learned that being close to Daiichi Murakami was both an incredible privilege and a constant test. Mr. Patterson practically sprinted across the restaurant to greet them, bowing awkwardly. "Mr. Murakami, welcome, welcome. What an honor to have you dining with us." Murakami's cold gaze swept over the manager like he was inspecting something mildly unpleasant. He didn't smile. He didn't offer his hand. He simply said, in heavily accented English, "My table." It wasn't a request. It was a command. Of course, right this way, sir." Patterson led them to table 7, gesturing toward Ella. "And this is Ella. She'll be taking care of you this evening." Ella stepped forward with her professional smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Madison." Murakami's eyes flicked to her for half a second. In that brief moment, Ella felt herself being assessed, categorized, and dismissed. She was just another server to him. Another invisible person in a world full of invisible people. She handed them the menus, her hands steady despite the pounding of her heart. The dinner began. Ella took their orders with careful precision, writing down every detail, confirming each request. The three men ordered appetizers, main courses, specific wine pairings. Ella repeated everything back perfectly and headed to the kitchen to submit the order. This is where everything started to go wrong. Victoria was hovering near the kitchen entrance when Ella came through. Her eyes narrowed as she watched Ella submit the order for table 7. "Let me see that," Victoria said, snatching the ticket from the printer. Her eyes scanned the order. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "You know," Victoria said sweetly, "I think I overheard them say they wanted the Chilean sea bass instead of the Wagyu for one of the dishes. You must have written it down wrong." Ella frowned. "No, I confirmed the order twice. They specifically—" "Are you calling me a liar?" Victoria's voice hardened. "I heard them clearly. Just change the order, unless you want to be the one who ruined Daiichi Murakami's dinner." Before Ella could respond, Victoria had already scribbled on the ticket, changing the order herself. "There. Fixed. You're welcome." Ella stared at the altered ticket, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. Something was very wrong, but she had no proof. It was her word against Victoria's, and she knew exactly whose word Patterson would believe. The appetizers went out without incident. Ella served them flawlessly, her movements smooth and professional. Then the main courses arrived. Ella carried the plates carefully to table 7. She placed the first plate in front of Murakami, the second in front of one associate, and then the Chilean sea bass in front of the third man. The associate stared at the fish. His face went pale. "This," he said in accented English, "this is not what I ordered." Ella's heart sank. "Sir, I apologize, let me—" But Murakami was already looking up, his eyes cold with displeasure. He turned to his associates and began speaking in rapid Japanese, his voice quiet but sharp. "This is exactly what I expected from a place like this. They hire these people and expect quality service? Look at her. She probably can't even count to 10 properly." His associates nodded nervously, eager to agree with their boss. "These Americans," Murakami continued in Japanese, his lip curling, "they put anyone in front of customers these days. No standards, no quality control. What can you expect from someone like this?" Ella stood frozen. She understood every word, every single hateful syllable. Mr. Patterson rushed over, having sensed trouble. His face was slick with sweat. "Is there a problem, Mr. Murakami? I'm so sorry. Please, let me—" "Your server made an error," Murakami said coldly in English, gesturing at Ella. "Wrong dish." Patterson's face twisted. He turned to Ella, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that was still audible enough. "I should have known better than to put you on this table. I apologize, Mr. Murakami. You know how it is with certain staff. They don't have the same attention to detail." Ella felt the words hit her like physical blows. Patterson wasn't just blaming her for the mistake. He was blaming her race, in front of everyone, in front of this billionaire who had just mocked her in Japanese. She saw Victoria watching from across the room, a satisfied smile on her face. Something inside Ella shifted. She thought about every insult she'd swallowed, every time she'd been overlooked, underestimated, dismissed because of the color of her skin or the job she worked, every dream she'd had to put aside, every bit of herself she'd had to hide just to survive. She thought about the Nakamura family in Tokyo, who had treated her with such warmth and respect, about the language she loved being used as a weapon to demean her, and she decided she was done hiding. Ella straightened her spine. Her professional smile faded, replaced by something calm and steady and absolutely unafraid. She looked directly at Daiichi Murakami, and she spoke in perfect, flawless Japanese. Her accent was Tokyo standard, the kind you'd hear from a news broadcaster or a university professor. Every word was precisely chosen, grammatically impeccable, delivered with quiet dignity that cut through the air like a blade. "With respect, sir, I did not make this error. I took the order correctly. I confirmed it twice with your associate. The original order was for Wagyu beef, not sea bass. Someone altered the ticket after I submitted it. I have worked here long enough to know my job, regardless of what assumptions people make about me based on my appearance." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "And sir, I understood everything you said about me just now. Every word." The silence that followed was deafening. Daiichi Murakami's face went completely white. His mouth actually fell open. For perhaps the first time in decades, the man who controlled boardrooms and commanded armies of executives was absolutely speechless. His two associates looked like they'd seen a ghost. They stared at Ella, then at their boss, then back at Ella, their minds unable to process what had just happened. Mr. Patterson stood frozen, completely lost. He didn't understand Japanese, but he understood that something massive had just shifted. Across the room, Victoria's smug smile had vanished completely. Murakami's shock slowly transformed into something else. He studied Ella with completely new eyes, like he was seeing her for the first time. "You—" He started in Japanese, then stopped. His voice was rough, uncertain. "Where did you learn to speak like this?" Ella met his gaze steadily. "I spent a year in Tokyo on a full scholarship. I studied at Waseda University. I lived with a host family in Setagaya who taught me more about your culture than any classroom ever could." Something flickered in Murakami's eyes. Waseda was one of Japan's most prestigious universities. Setagaya was one of Tokyo's most respected residential areas. "You said the order was changed," he said slowly, switching back to English. "You are certain of this?" "Completely certain, sir. I wrote down exactly what your associate ordered. Someone altered the ticket after I submitted it to the kitchen." Murakami's eyes narrowed. The businessman in him was taking over now, the man who had built an empire by finding the truth in every situation. "This restaurant has cameras in the kitchen, yes?" he asked Patterson. Patterson went pale. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary." "I did not ask if it was necessary." Murakami's voice was ice. "I asked if you have cameras. I am considering a significant investment in this establishment. I would like to see how it operates behind the scenes. Show me the footage from the past hour." It wasn't a request. 15 minutes later, they were in Patterson's office watching the security footage on his computer. Murakami sat in the manager's chair. Patterson stood beside him, sweating profusely. Ella stood near the door, her heart pounding. And Victoria had been summoned. The footage was crystal clear. It showed Ella taking the order from table 7, writing everything down carefully. It showed her walking to the kitchen, submitting the ticket. It showed her original order, Wagyu beef for all 3 guests. And then it showed Victoria. The video captured everything. Victoria snatching the ticket, Victoria scribbling on it, changing the order. Victoria's satisfied smile as she watched the altered ticket go to the kitchen. The silence in that office was suffocating. Victoria's face had gone gray. I thought I heard them say, it was an honest mistake." "Get out," Patterson said, his voice hollow. He couldn't even look at her. "Clean out your locker. You're done." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, but one look at Murakami's cold expression silenced her. She fled the office without another word. Murakami stood slowly. He turned to Ella, and for a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then he spoke in Japanese, his voice quieter than before, the arrogance gone. "You were wrongly accused, and I—" He paused, the words seeming to cost him something. "I was wrong about you, about many things." Daiichi Murakami asked to speak with Ella privately. They sat at a quiet table in the corner of the restaurant, away from curious eyes. The dinner service continued around them, but it felt like they were in their own world. Murakami was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, it was in Japanese, slowly and carefully. I have been thinking about what happened tonight. Not just the food, not just the mistake. Everything. He looked up at Ella, and she saw something she hadn't expected to see in the eyes of a billionaire. Shame. When I walked into this restaurant, I made judgments about you before you even spoke a word. Your job, your uniform, your... He hesitated. Your appearance. I decided who you were without knowing anything about you. Then your manager said what he said. He blamed you, not because of evidence, but because of what you look like. And I did nothing. I let it happen because his prejudice confirmed my own. Ella listened in silence. I have built my company on the principle that talent is everything, Murakami continued. That skill and hard work matter more than background or connections. But tonight, I realized I do not practice what I preach. I looked at you and saw a server. I should have seen a person. He shook his head slowly. My own grandmother worked in a restaurant in Osaka. She was the wisest person I ever knew. And here I am, 60 years later, dismissing someone for doing the same honest work she did. Ella finally spoke, her voice soft. We all carry prejudices, sir. The question is what we do when we recognize them. Murakami studied her for a long moment. Then, for the first time all evening, he smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Miss Mitchell, may I ask why you are working here? With your language abilities, your education, you could be doing so much more. Ella was quiet for a moment. Then she told him the truth, about her mother's illness, about dropping out of Columbia, about the dreams she'd had to set aside. Murakami listened to every word. When she finished, he nodded slowly. My company is opening a new office in New York, he said. We need people who can bridge cultures, people who understand both Japan and America, who can navigate between worlds, people who have integrity and courage, who will tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is not charity. This is not an apology. This is recognition of talent I almost missed because of my own blindness. He placed the card on the table between them. If you are interested, come to this address Monday morning at 9. The salary would be $85,000 to start, with full benefits, including health insurance that would cover your mother, and we would support you in finishing your degree. Ella stared at the card. Her hands were trembling slightly. Why? She asked quietly. After everything you said, why would you offer this? Murakami's expression was serious. Because you did something tonight that no one in my company has done in years. You told me I was wrong, to my face, in my own language. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable? He leaned back in his chair. I am surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. They are so afraid of me that they agree with everything I say. But you stood up for yourself even when everything was against you. That takes something money cannot buy. Ella picked up the card, feeling the weight of it. Not just cardstock and ink. A doorway. A second chance. I'll need time to think about this, she said. Murakami nodded, and there was respect in that nod. Of course, important decisions deserve consideration. But, Miss Mitchell... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Whatever you decide, please know that I see you now. Not as a server. Not as your job or your circumstances. As a person of remarkable ability and dignity. He stood and gave her a small bow, a gesture of respect that carried deep meaning in Japanese culture. Thank you, he said, for teaching an old man that he still has much to learn. Ella smiled, the first genuine smile she'd allowed herself all evening. Thank you for listening. Ella took the job. 3 years later, she was the director of cross-cultural relations for Murakami Industries' North American division. She'd finished her degree. Her mother was healthy. the medical bills paid. She'd even visited the Nakamura family in Tokyo, introducing them to the woman she'd become. And the Murakami Foundation, which Daiichi established the year after that dinner, has now sent over 40 young people from underrepresented backgrounds to study abroad in Japan. The scholarship is called the Bridge Builders Program. Ella sits on the selection committee. Not everyone who judged her changed. Not every story has a perfect ending. But Ella learned something important that night at the Madison. Your circumstances do not define you. Other people's assumptions do not limit you. And sometimes, one moment of courage, one refusal to stay silent, can open doors you never knew existed. She also learned that people can change, that prejudice, while deeply ingrained, is not permanent. Daiichi Murakami walked into that restaurant seeing Ella as invisible. He walked out, seeing her as invaluable. Not because she proved anything to him, but because she demanded to be seen for who she really was. The story of Ella Mitchell reminds us that power isn't about money or status. It's about knowing your own worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. It's about speaking truth, even when your voice shakes. It's about rising when the world expects you to stay down. You don't have to accept the box people try to put you in. You don't have to be defined by their limitations. Your gifts are yours. Your dignity is yours. Your story is yours to write. And sometimes, when you speak your truth in the language of those who underestimate you, the whole world has no choice but to listen. If this story touched your heart, remember, you are worthy of respect. Your voice matters. Your dreams are valid. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. And if you're ever feeling invisible, remember Ella Mitchell. Remember that the quietest people in the room are often the most powerful. They're just waiting for the right moment to speak. Thank you for watching Real Black Voices. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it.